There was a sound, most of you have not heard it in decades. Not because it disappeared from the world, but because something replaced it so quietly that you barely noticed the moment it was gone. It was a knock, not a text, not a notification, not a ring. A knock, specifically 3 knocks on a screen door in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon in summer, with no warning, no agenda, and no particular reason other than that someone thought of you and decided to show up. I want to take you back to that knock, because what it represented, what it actually felt like in your chest when you heard it, was something that most people alive today have never experienced. And I think you have forgotten how extraordinary it was. Picture the house you grew up in, the front door, the screen door with the aluminum frame that bounced when it shut. You know the one, you know the exact sound it made. Now picture a Tuesday afternoon in July. You are inside, maybe you are watching television. Maybe you are lying on the floor doing nothing in particular. Maybe you are in that specific summer stupor, that deep, unscheduled, unaccountable stillness that only existed in a childhood before the internet. And then the knock, 3 quick ones. And you already knew, before you got to the door, before you could see anyone, you already knew what it meant. It meant someone was here. Someone had thought of you, walked or biked to your house, stood on your porch, and knocked. Without asking first, without checking whether you were free, without planning anything at all. They just came. And that, right there, is what I want you to sit with. Because that gesture, which felt completely ordinary, then was actually a profound act of trust. It said, "I believe you will be glad I came." It said, "Our friendship does not require advance notice." It said you are worth showing up for without knowing what happens next. Psychologists who study social bonding call this kind of unplanned, unscheduled contact. It is the kind of relationship maintenance that happens not through deliberate effort, but through proximity and availability, through simply being in each other's lives without managing it. And research on adult friendship quality consistently finds that generations who experienced high rates of ambient connection in childhood, unscheduled visits, impromptu gathering, spontaneous presence, not a scheduled appointment of this great model of what friendship is, not a scheduled appointment, not a curated interaction, a living thing that simply shows up. You built your understanding of friendship in a world where showing up unannounced was not rude. It was how you said I was thinking about you. In that world, the screen door was never really closed to the right people. You knew whose knock was whose. Davy's knock was fast and high, 3 quick raps near the top of the frame. Michael knocked once loud like he was testing the door's structural integrity. Karen would knock and then immediately open it because she already knew the answer. You knew all of this the way you knew the sound of your own name. You did not need caller ID. You did not need a profile picture. You knew who was there by the rhythm of how they arrived. Think about what that means. It means you had friends whose physical presence was so familiar, so consistent, so woven into your daily life, that you could identify them by the sound of their knuckles on a door. That is not a small thing. That is the specific texture of a deep friendship. Not a friendship that was managed and maintained through scheduled calls. A friendship that was simply lived in the way you live in a house. Now, here is something I want you to notice. In that world, when a friend knocked and you happened to be in the middle of something, you stopped. Not because you had to, because they were there. You stopped what you were doing and you went to the door. Because the presence of another person physically there on your porch having chosen to come to you, that outweighed whatever you were doing. That is a sentence worth reading twice. The physical presence of someone who chose to come to you outweighed whatever else you were doing. Ask yourself, honestly, when was the last time that was true? When was the last time a person's presence, not their text, not their notification, but their actual physical arrival, made you set everything down and simply be with them. That shift, that reorientation of your entire attention toward another person. And it produced it automatically without negotiation, without scheduling, without any of the friction that accompanies social interaction today. They knocked, you went to the door, and, for the next hour, nothing else existed. There was also something else happening in that moment. Something that took me a long time to name. When a friend knocked without calling first, they were taking a risk, but a real one. The risk that you might not be home, the risk that you might not want company, the risk that they would walk all the way to your house, knock, and get nothing back but silence. They took that risk because you were worth it. They decided, without calculating it, that the possibility of your company was worth the possibility of disappointment. And you took that same risk every time you got on your bike and pedaled to someone's house on a summer afternoon, with nothing particular in mind, without a guarantee. And when it worked, when they were home, when the door opened, when you saw their face, there was a specific feeling, the particular satisfaction of a gamble that paid off. I wonder if you remember that feeling, the specific lightness of arriving at a friend's house unannounced and being genuinely welcome, not welcomed by text, by a face that brightened when it saw you, by a door that opened all the way, by a voice that said without any preparation, "Come in." That welcome, unscheduled, unpolished, immediate, was its own kind of gift. It had not been arranged. It had not been planned. It came directly from the fact that they were glad you were there in that moment, with no warning. And you knew it, because you could see it. Now I want to ask you something. Do you think the young people in your life today have ever felt that? Have they ever biked to a friend's house on a summer afternoon with nothing in mind? Have they ever knocked on a door without texting first? Have they ever had a friend show up at their door? Just show up, just appear, just be there, and felt that specific lightness. And I say that not to criticize them, but to name something that you carry that they do not. You know what it felt like to live in a world where another person's company could arrive without announcement. You know what it felt like to be the kind of friend who showed up. You know what it felt like to be worth showing up for. That knowledge lives in your body. It lives in the part of you that still notices, even now, when a friend makes an effort. When someone goes out of their way. When someone shows up not because it was scheduled, but because they thought of you and acted on it. You notice it because you know what it means. You were trained by 1,000 summer afternoons, by 1,000 screen door knocks, by 1,000 unplanned Tuesday hours, to understand that showing up is a form of love. Not performing love, not documenting love, showing up. The world your children and grandchildren are navigating has made showing up. Digital connection is so available, so frictionless, so constant that the threshold for physically appearing in another person's life has become almost impossibly high. Why would you bike to someone's house when you can text them? Why would you knock on a door when you can send a voice note? The logic is efficient, but something is lost in the efficiency. What is lost is the moment of arrival. The specific quality of a person choosing to be physically present with you had a cost with no guarantee, because they thought you were worth it. You were shaped by it. It is part of how you understand what it means to care about someone. So the next time someone tells you that your generation is resistant to technology or slow to adapt or overly sentimental about the way things used to be, remember the knock. Remember what it asked of the person doing the knocking. And remember what it felt like to open a door and find someone there who had decided, without any of the frictionless convenience of the modern world, that you were worth the trip. Because that feeling, that specific vanishing, irreplaceable feeling, is not nostalgia. It is evidence. Evidence that you were loved in a particular way, by people who showed it without being asked, without scheduling it, without documenting it. They just knocked, and you knew. I am Arthur, and I will see you in the next one.